The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi there, and welcome to today's webinar, Moving Your Transportation Program from Yellow to Black, sponsored by VersaTrans, a Tyler School Solution, and WebAttract, your end-to-end solution provider for webinar demand creation. Hi, I'm Mike Agron. I'm the executive webinar producer with WebAttract, and I'll be your moderator and one of your hosts for today's session, which is also the inaugural webinar in Tyler VersaTrans' new Thought Leadership Program. Just a moment, I'll be introducing today's speakers, who happens to be a distinguished and nationally recognized group of subject matter experts in transportation services. So for today, we thought it would be a lot more interesting and engaging for all of you in the audience if we were able to have our panel interact with each other, where they could share their insights, best practices, and lessons learned from their collective experience in the areas of special education, operations, and talking about how utilizing technology can be an enabler and can ensure that your transportation and programs are operating at maximum efficiency, or, as the title of today's webinar states, help you move your transportation from yellow to black. Now, you also have an opportunity to have your questions answered at the end of our panel discussion, and I'll get to that shortly. We do have quite a bit to cover, and I'd like to let you know who's here. We have a national audience. We've got over 26 states that represent segments from education, transportation and distribution, state and local government, and other areas. And I'm going to launch a poll. Which one of these are budget issues that are going to affect your transportation program for the 2010-2011 school year? Okay, I'm going to share the results with everybody. So as we can see, 44% need to reduce cost by better efficiency, no reduced service. Next, 38% have severe challenges and may be looking at cutting service. Followed by 13%, you're okay for now but anticipate problems in the future. And then 5%, the program is well funded, has no budget problems. That's very interesting, and we thank you for that. I'm sure that's going to be helpful and insightful to the panelists as we go on. You know, when you received the invitation from us, we were pretty clear in stating that your transportations program mission really is to keep the children safe and provide excellent service as efficiently as possible. And in order to do that, the transportation program has to support the instructional program with the greatest possible efficiency so that it's not consuming unnecessary resources that can be used in the classroom. So there's many factors that go into the cost of a transportation program, and I'll highlight a few of them. The first is the student assignment plans. Factors such as growth and declining enrollment models, neighborhood versus open enrollment, mainstreaming of special ed students, the geography of the district, policy decisions such as transportation eligibility, walk-to-stop distances, door versus house bus stops, in-house versus outsourced, cost of facilities, fleet fuel maintenance, insurance, and, of course, the efficiency of the routing plan, the use of technology. So what today's program is going to do is touch on all of these in a general way and explore three of these areas in more detail. We'll look specifically at how special education transportation policy decisions can be controlled and how they affect and impact your bottom line, and how the management of compliance issues affects your overall exposure and liability, and then look at technology that's now readily available to the transportation director. Effective management in these areas is the best way to ensure your transportation program is really operating at maximum efficiency. So for instance, have you ever asked yourself questions like, how am I doing? Am I operating my program as efficiently as possible? Are there suggestions or resources out there that could help me better manage my program? To get the conversation underway, let's get started by introducing our panel, get their thoughts on this and everything else that we have to cover. We have indeed a distinguished panel, and we call them a thought leadership panel because all of them are thought leaders in their own right. Let me briefly introduce each one of them, and then I'll bring them on. The first is Alex Robinson, and she's the former Director of Transportation Services for the San Diego Unified School District, which is the second largest school district in California. Alex is currently the President-elect for the National Association for Pupil Transportation and is the current chair of that organization's leadership initiative. Next, we have John P. Fahey, and John served as the Assistant Superintendent for Service Center Operations for the Buffalo City School District for 18 years. his district ran 630 daily home-to-school buses that covered 2,200 runs for 28,000 students. He had an annual budget of $51 million. Now, John has also participated in 13 peer review studies of the transportation programs of major urban school districts under the auspices of the Council of the Greater City Schools. And finally, we have Justin Wilshinsky, or Jay as we call him, and he has more than 12 years of experience in transportation management leadership. He was recently named Transportation Director at Franklin Township Community School Corporation after serving the last several years as the Assistant Transportation Director at Clark Pleasant Community Schools in Indianapolis. Prior to that, he worked for Laidlaw Education Services in Michigan. So let me officially start off and say hello to our panel, and let's start with you, Justin. How are you doing?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you. Where are you calling from?
Southeast Indianapolis today.
Good. And how's the weather out there?
It's beautiful, 65 degrees, and we have no snow, so we're happy.
Good. Then we have John. John, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm calling in from my home office here in beautiful, sunny Buffalo, New York.
Delighted to have you. And finally, Alex Robinson. Alex, how are you doing, and thanks for joining us. And tell us where you're calling from.
I am fine, and I am actually calling from Boussac, France, which is about 3.5 hours south of Paris.
Well, great. Thanks for being on so late. Well, we have a real virtual meeting, and with speakers in 3 different locations, and I happen to be in Sacramento, California, so delighted to have everybody on here. So let's get started. I've got a question that I want to start with you, John. How did you know how you were doing in Buffalo?
One of the main ways we did a reality check in Buffalo was through the use of metrics and benchmarking. We determined what our important measures were. We captured the data, we looked at the data, and then we compared it to ourselves year by year. This gave us a tool to know how we were doing, and it allowed us to spot problems as soon as they were occurring.
And Alex, how did you know you were operating programs as efficiently as possible in San Diego?
For us, it's probably like other large school districts, I guess depending on, in addition to the data collection that we had, depending on the customer feedback we received. If kids were getting to school on time, we would take the data that we were collecting and see, if kids were actually getting to school on time, number of parent complaints, number of parent concerns, making sure kids were getting to school ready to learn.
And Justin, finally with you, how did you seek out resources and that could help you better manage the program you had underway at Franklin Township Community School Corporation?
We took a look at the big picture as far as what the needs of different areas that we had to address were, and then we set up a committee internally, along with some committee members that were externally composed of parents and our community members, and took a look at what all of our needs were, and did an in-depth research process on different software, different technologies that would allow us to go forward in a positive manner while being fiscally responsible.
Good. So let's get into one of our focus areas for today, which is special education. And it's obviously a critical area for every transportation director, the most delicate passengers and sometimes the most expensive transportation costs. So Alex, let me ask you first, what are some of the key things that a transportation director should be looking at to achieve transportation efficiencies in their special ed service?
Well, I think the first thing is that they directors, and hopefully this is the norm as opposed to the exception. But most people probably at this point know that 2 separate fleets aren't needed. Just because a child is in a program for students with disabilities doesn't mean that child needs to get on a special bus, or there really isn't any such thing as a handicap bus necessarily. Definitely have to consider cost efficiency, but you have to make sure that you're not using cost as the only way that you're transporting students with disabilities. Cost actually can't be mentioned to parents, especially in the process of an IEP. That has to be kind of behind the scenes as you work with your special education partners. Certainly you don't want 2 of the same types of buses going down the same street to the same school. Kids, whenever possible, should be riding with their non-disabled peers, and that's part of least restrictive environment. Obviously, using the tools of technology, data collection, making sure that you're aware of what the student's disability is. Also, at the same time, making sure that the driver's attendance administrators, transportation personnel really understand what those nature and needs and characteristics of those students are. Identifying the students, obviously, is the first step in data collection. Being a part of the existing patterns. In other words, if you're working with your special education partners, which you should be collaboratively, knowing that if they're going to be putting a new facility or a new class for students with emotional disturbances or students with learning handicaps, that transportation is involved in that picture and involved in actually saying to the people, hey, you know what, we already have buses going to this location. This is really where this facility should be placed. Understanding, too, that the Office of Civil Rights is going to look very carefully as to if you have kids without disabilities riding on one bus for a certain amount of time, how long are we having our kids with disabilities ride? The kids without their non-disabled peers need to be riding about the same time. Using existing patterns, as I said, to encourage inclusion, the least restrictive environment should be on the bus, just like it is in the classroom. If you have a child who does not need assistance getting to and from the classroom, they probably don't need assistance to and from the bus stop. Making sure we don't use terms like door-to-door or curb-to-curb. Look at things such as closest, safest stop, which seems a lot more efficient. And then, of course, using our equipment and technology to the highest efficient use. If you purchase a bus, purchase a larger bus that has a side lift, that has a wheelchair lift, and transport kids with their non-disabled peers. So really working on it as a whole environment, not having two separate fleets. Certainly, once again, using cost efficiency as a secondary issue with the parents, but a primary issue as you're working within your departments.
Great. And so I think, as you said, really a bus is an extension of the classroom. And to take us there, let's bring on Justin and John. And Justin, why don't you go first?
Very much like Alex said, that we took a very big stance this year on implementing technology into our program this year and tracking the data, trying to look at the different students that we transport and what the different needs are, and making sure that we meet the needs of those children. One of the other things that we did, and this school year, we've worked with our neighboring districts that have adopted the same technology programs that we're using. We're able to share data and actually share a lot of the routes that we use. One of the programs that we have is over 75 miles away, and if we didn't share with our neighboring districts, each of us would be responsible for transporting students over 75 miles, back 75 miles, and then doing that, repeating in the afternoon. So by doing that, we were able to eliminate a lot of the excess wear and tear on the buses, saving some of our equipment, and sharing some of our routes with our neighboring districts. So it's worked out not only to save us, but make a better transition for the children and actually keep our costs down. So it's really been a great benefit utilizing the different data that we can to share with our districts and trying to achieve, the greatest potential for efficiency.
Great. John, I know you have some comments to add on some of the ways your district managed this, so I'm going to bring up the next slide for you.
Yes, also as Alex advises, we only had one fleet. We were big proponents of the idea that a bus was a bus. There was just one bus. They just came in different sizes. Students with an IEP rode on the big buses, and the small buses could serve any and all the routes. The size of the bus was related more to the size of the load, not the classification of the kids on the bus. This enabled great efficiencies for us, being able to look at our fleet as one whole. And more importantly, I think it helped to break down the stereotypes and stigmas that have often been associated with special ed transportation.
Thanks, John. And now I want to get into a discussion on risk management. And we know risk management is another huge area of potential liability and cost for a district. So, Justin, how do you manage your program to minimize the risks and exposure of your district?
Well, coming on to Franklin Township last spring, one of the first things that I did is I did an overall evaluation of the department's performance, took a look at all the different areas, such as the personnel files, driver behavior, driver performance, our communication with parents as far as bus stop safety, and realized that we really had no system in place at the time that allowed me to take a look at statistics and data. So one of the first things that our committee did is we looked at technology that would allow us to track and give us the numbers and the figures that we needed, in addition to working with our insurance carrier to find out what has our past performance been and what kind of trend analysis were we looking at as far as accident reduction, a safety training program to reduce accidents within the department. One of the other things that was very obvious is we had a situation last spring in which we had a driver that had driven the afternoon route intoxicated, and the Department of Transportation had come in and unfortunately uncovered that we had no personnel files ever being kept up, we had no background checks being done, and we had no system that our upper administration could monitor us internally to ensure that we were doing our job here at transportation. So when we did actually go out and purchase modern technology and software for our department, we made sure that we had different features and different tools that were accessible not only to us, but my upper powers to be, to ensure that we were being consistent and that we were being compliant from a federal level and from a local level. So currently we have a system in place that allows us to track all of our driver credentials, from their driver's license to their criminal history checks to any training that we do, from classroom training to behind the wheel training. And anytime we have a situation, we're able to log it, and we're able to take a look at the figures, take a look at the data, and try and find what our common trends are. In addition to that, anytime the state police or the Department of Transportation are coming out, it allows us to know specifically what we have on what we call the e-file, which is the driver record electronically, and compare it to the hard copy. So whatever we have in the driver's personnel file on the hard copy, that everything matches on our electronic copy. So whether it be myself, whether it be my boss, the superintendent, or my secretary, anybody that has access to this, we know 24 hours a day where we stand. In addition to that, it gives us warnings and updates, very much like the Microsoft Outlook calendar or the group-wise calendars, events that are coming up, such as a driver's license that's going to become expired. In addition, we also made sure that this program allowed us to be consistent and in compliance with our federal drug and alcohol testing policy. One of the things that was not being done before was they were actually not meeting the federal DOT guidelines. And what this does is when we do have random drug testing and pre-employment and post-accident testing, it allows us to log them so that when we do our annual reviews with our state police, we know that we're not going to be assessed a fine. Our DOT audit from last spring, after the result of the unfortunate situation, cost us well over $10,000 in penalties, and the software that we've implemented was far less in cost. So our return of investment in the first year paid for the software that we utilized and got us in a much better position. One of the other things that we did that I'd like to talk about last was a point incentive program for our drivers. We implemented a program that rewarded them for good behavior to help reduce some of the risks and the accidents that we had. So for this school year, the first year that we launched it, our drivers are evaluated and they're given point incentives for every day that they work. And if they have an accident, they lose a point, or actually they lose 2 points. Their evaluation counts towards a certain number of points, as well as maintaining a cleanliness level of standards for their bus. So this year, our drivers actually receive almost like a weekly report card on a point system, and at the end of the year, we tabulate all their points, and that's how they select extra work for next school year, select their routes for the upcoming school year, which awards them for good behavior. Those that have had accidents in the past, we've actually seen the volume of accidents reduce quite a bit since we've implemented this program, and our software allows us to track and keep it live. So we've really taken a lot of steps this year utilizing modern technology to help cope a lot of the high costs and insurance premium payouts that we've had.
Very comprehensive. Alex, would you like to add something to the conversation?
I think just when you're talking about risk, especially in these times of budget crisis, certainly monitoring and being able to know exactly what's going on with your technicians, et cetera, as Justin mentioned. What happens oftentimes is, we're saving a lot and we're taking risks, but we want to make sure that we're not losing anything in terms of safety. We're monitored in California in terms of California Highway Patrol, et cetera. So there's a lot of things that we have to do, but using that compliance and that monitoring to be able to really make sure that we're not losing anything in terms of safety. Also, when you're looking at the risk, real quickly, just talking about your drivers and your attendants, if possible, you want to take a look at what kind of liability you're using with workers' comp, how you're tracking light duty. Obviously, if a person is off on a workers' comp case and working as light duty, you don't want them to have light duty on the bus. Just because the person is a driver once, then they are
on light duty. You don't want them to be an attendant at that point. Don't make them a bus monitor as their light duty assignment. You should be able to track all that stuff, though, in terms of technology. So that's something that we've done as well.
Great. John?
In Buffalo, it's a little different. We're a 100% contractor-operated model. The contractors provided all of our buses. We just managed it. We provided the routing and the directions to them, but the contractors provided the buses. The way the district is still responsible for the transportation program. We can't get rid of that responsibility. We don't let that just go to the contractors, but we just use the contractors to fulfill that responsibility. So to manage our risk management, we built performance standards into our contracts for areas we deemed compliance was critical. We then added penalty clauses for noncompliance to those standards. This added a financial incentive for the contractor so that they had an incentive to manage the fleet as we expected.
Well, thanks. Now I want to get into fleet maintenance, and we're going to start this time with Justin, and then Alex and John. If you would like to jump in after Justin's comments, go for it. So, Justin, I'm not going to turn your mic up.
Okay, this too was an interesting area where we had to spend a lot of time kind of evaluating what we were doing and what direction we were going to go, and talking to great individuals like Alex and John from coast to coast on different methods that we can implement here at Franklin Township. It really came down to, making sure that preventative maintenance was being done and what the return of investment would be by doing that. One of the things that we found that we were not doing is we had no paper trails whatsoever. When I walked in, I asked the mechanic, how are we doing on our buses? How are we maintaining them? I was provided with no answers. And we traditionally, here at Franklin Township, run a 10-year replacement cycle, which is what the state recommended, which has since changed it to a 12-year bus replacement schedule. We just simply replace buses when they hit 12 years old. Upon digging into some of our files and implementing a software program that would allow us to track all of our data and stats, we found an enormous amount of information and data that proved a lot of our original philosophies to be false. Some of the things that we did here was implement a preventative maintenance schedule through our software. And what that has allowed us to do is every 45 days, it signals when a bus is due for service. So for every 45 days, we actually have an electronic calendar that warns the mechanics these buses are due for service, they belong in the garage. And in addition to that, we have found that the oil changes and the fluid changes, it's no longer so much a schedule set up on days, it's set up on engine hours. So the software that we currently use allows us not only to bring the buses in for an overall service every 45 days, but it also has a schedule set up based on the engine hours and the mileage and when they're due for service to have the fluids drained. So all of our drivers every day actually log their mileage, their start mileage, into this database, into our program through a laptop, and it automatically cycles. So when the mechanics log in every day, they see specifically what buses are due and what specifically they need done, which allows them to better manage their time and allows me to better manage their labor hours, which has worked out great for a corporation. This school year alone, we've had to cut, in our school district, over $8.9 million, $4.2 million of that coming from my department, leaving me with $1.2 million to operate for next school year. So every little bit of savings that we could make up this year has drastically paid off for a school corporation. One of the other things it's allowed us to do is take a look at when we have our annual inspections coming up. Our mechanics are able to actually log all the information for what's coming up, what they've done to a bus, so they know what buses have been done, how much time we've spent, and what our parts and labor costs have been. Some of the reports that we're able to do now and that we're actually able to print off have given me great data, great stats, such as what our shop fees are, how much we're losing in labor costs per vehicle, what our mileage per gallon is getting per vehicle. And that was really important because this summer we're going to be losing 45 buses out of our fleet due to a reduction in force and us eliminating some of our costs and going to a 3-tier system. So one of the things that we originally thought was eliminate the oldest buses that we have and go ahead and keep the newer ones. Upon going through some of the data that we've accumulated over the last year, we actually found that some of the buses that were only 7, 8 years old, or in our specific case, 2 years old, would actually save us quite a bit of money if we exhausted them now and kept some of the older buses and our larger buses. So by analyzing our fleet maintenance program and taking a look at what is costing our school district money and what's not costing us money, we're able to have a better long-term 7+ years plan in place that will actually save our taxpayers quite a bit of money and allow us to better manage our assets.
Thanks, Jay. John, on fleet maintenance, do you have a couple thoughts you'd like to add?
Well, in Buffalo, we managed our fleet maintenance in two major ways with our contractor-operated model. The first was we specified both an average age and a maximum age for the buses in our contract. This specified for the contractor the type of fleet we wanted for our kids. We also worked directly with our state regulatory agency, in this case the New York State Department of Transportation, that was responsible for the inspection of the contractor's fleet. This gave us a major indicator on the contractor's compliance with their fleet maintenance and safety commitments. So we were able to track how they were doing on their first-time inspections and repeat inspections, and we worked daily with the contractor following up on that data.
Great. And Alex, I'd like to get you into the conversation too.
Okay, thanks. The only thing that I would probably add is that we in San Diego for a long time we had a great bus replacement program. We had a great program where we kept our conventional buses 5 years and our transit-style buses front engine, front engine and rear engine 10 years. So what happened is as budgets started getting slashed, that replacement program went away, and by tracking what we were doing, we were really able to paint a great picture for the school board, and in our I don't want to say in our defense, but really in order to kind of tell our story for not only bus replacement, but really to make sure that the school board understood that, hey, if we continue the way we're going and we do not replace buses at some point, we're going to either have to add mechanics, we're going to have to add technicians, and based on these budget cuts, and they were pretty drastic, as if there's anybody on the phone from California, they know. But we really wanted to paint a picture, and so we were able to show that, quite frankly, that if these buses start breaking down, and if we're not able to replace things, and we don't have money to hire new technicians, then that's going to directly affect the students. The school bus is an extension of the classroom, and we want to get these buses on the road, ready to drive kids. We don't want them to be late, and we want kids to be ready to learn when they get there. And that bus as an extension of the classroom is really important.
Thanks, Alex. Now I want to move into a little discussion on some of the technology tools that you can use to manage and control your program. So, John, let's start with you. Why should a transportation director use automated routing technology?
When I started in Buffalo in 1992, we were using pins and yarn to lay out the bus routes, and then we'd hand type the left and rights for the drivers. I like to think of the analogy of using of typing a letter using a typewriter versus a word processing program. Who among us today would even think of using a typewriter? The word processing program doesn't write the letter for us, but it gives you the tool you need to do your document professionally. It's the same exact analogy with automated routing software. It's not going to do the work for you, but rather it gives you the tool you need to do the job. It is a readily available and mature technology now. It's certainly an investment for a school district to acquire an automated routing package, but once on hand, it will form the foundation for the long-term management of the safety, the service levels, and the efficiency of the program.
I know we have the next slide is queued up to talk about some of the results, so I think that's an important part to talk about what were some of the savings and benefits. So I'll let you take this one here, John.
Well, a couple of years in Buffalo, we had a situation where we had 16 of our schools on academic notice from New York State. The solution advanced from the instructional leaders was to extend the school day an hour each at each of these schools. Our first look showed an increase of 100 new buses would be needed to extend these schools an hour each at an annual cost of about $6 million. Having a powerful software tool enabled me to work with school times and routes and end up with only a 40-bus increase, saving 60 new buses and about $3.6 million a year. Not only were we able to support the instructional program with the greatest possible efficiency, but the really good news was that the strategy worked, and 12 out of these 16 schools are now back in good academic standing. It was a case of the transportation program not being in the way, but doing something to support the instructional program that was very effective.
Okay, let's take a look now and ask the question, what else should your software be able to do? And I think this gives a couple examples. I'll let you take this one too.
Yeah, your software should be able to help you to manage your student data so that the children receive the correct services and arrangements. For example, the right kind of a bus stop. Is it a corner stop, a group stop, or is it a stop at a daycare, or maybe the closest, safest stop, as Alex tells us? We want to make sure we're providing the correct service for the child. The parent expects us to know that child and provide the correct service and respond appropriately. It should help us, the software should help us to correctly apply our policy decisions. Most software packages will help you with school enrollment boundaries, transportation eligibility, things like walk-to-stop distance. It should help us create safe and efficient routes. The transportation director or their designee should be the one that's determining where the buses are traveling and stopping, not the bus drivers. It should provide the data we need to develop our key performance indicators, what we need to manage our program so we know how we're doing. And it should it should help us to manage and control our expenditures. For example, let's just look at deadhead for a minute. Deadhead is the time on the bus when the bus is traveling while empty, perhaps to the first pickup on the route or after the last drop-off, to or from the bus yard or between route connections. Simply put, miles traveled equals cost to the district. You're paying the driver. You're using fuel. You're creating emissions, both affecting the environment. You're adding miles to the bus. In Buffalo, my software gave me the tool to manage the routes so that we were running the absolute minimum number of miles necessary to get our kids back and forth to school. This was one of our major indicators, something we tracked very closely, live miles to dead miles, miles per day per bus, and we kept our miles at a minimum, kept our fuel, kept our time. Everything else followed suit from that.
We just heard John on how, in addition to getting better economies of scale, you've been better able to manage student data, you were able to apply the correct policies, control resources, and all of which are creating a foundation for performance standards for safer and more efficient routes. But the question is that it? I mean, you just get the automated software routing and you've got that and you're good to go?
Well, there's many other technologies now readily available to assist with the management. Chief among these is probably GPS. GPS is still a technology that you could say was in the startup phase, but it's quickly moving from a nice-to-have tool to a must-have tool, I believe. In Buffalo, we were able to move from the GPS first and most common use as a spot check of an individual situation to a more systematic tool to check just those certain data points that needed attention. For example, we have a filter that shows all buses that are more than 10 minutes late arriving at school on a particular morning. This moved the management of a very large task, our on-time arrival of 1,100 routes to schools each morning, to an easily manageable task, just looking at the dozen or so routes that were more than 10 minutes late. You can see how this type of focus could have a tremendous influence on extending your management capabilities. We know that cameras on the buses are a rapidly expanding technology. There's constant developments in the capture, the storage, and the transmittal of the data to make this an even more effective and important tool for administrators. Automated student tracking is a relatively new tool, but I think we'll see much more of it in the near future. Kids are issued radio frequency ID tags, which are then read passively on the bus, and the data is transmitted to a database. This type of information can help to manage loads, perhaps identifying routes with low ridership that might be good candidates for consolidation. I can also easily envision in the future where we might be providing direct communications to parents through text messages, letting them know when their child got on and off the bus. And it certainly forms an excellent tool for our Medicaid reimbursement compliance. Lastly, I think the area of using technology to enhance our communications is critical. We need to get the information on the bus routes out automatically to those users who need to know. There are many tools available associated with the automated routing programs to help accomplish this communication. Times have changed, and the transportation director today needs to be a proponent of technology to successfully accomplish their many and growing responsibilities.
Well, thanks, John. Now, Justin and Alex, let's turn to you. Start with you, Jay. How far did Franklin Township and then Alex, if you'll answer, San Diego go in their use of technology? So, Justin, let you start.
Sure. I would say in the last year, we went from nothing to building what I would call the foundation blocks to an endless opportunity. John brought up a lot of great points that the communication process is so important as we are all agents of the school system dealing specifically with our community members, whether it be parents, guardians, or families, or shelters that represent the families that we serve. And I think one of the most important things, especially right now where everybody's managing money and everybody's in the media spotlight with cutting funds, parents want information. Parents want factual data. Alex, indicated the communication process is so important with dealing with students with special needs, and John indicated that the savings that they did at Buffalo, all of these go back to how important the communication aspect is. So parents want to know they want to know the information, and they're dependent on us for having these stats, calling up and saying, hey, what's your average cost of operating a school bus per child? And then what's your average cost of maintenance per bus per school year? And then you take it a step further. They want the minimum levels of communication that we've been able to give them through technology, such as looking up school routes online, being able to access bus information online. And one small feature such as having that tool, having it accessible to the parents, which has been the selling feature of good communication, has saved us over $4,000 in postage for mailing student bus postcards in August before school starts. So we've taken a very small step last year by just implementing a lot of this, and we are now venturing into the area of GPS. We're actually looking at working with a development company to potentially look in the direction of having an application available to the iPhone and the BlackBerry where parents can find out if their child did get on the bus or not, and that would give them alerts. So I think John hit the nail on the head. We're at the beginning of many great things that are to come for technology.
Thanks, Jay. And we've got quite a few questions in the queue. We're going to get to them in just a moment, and we really appreciate that. But I want to give Alex an opportunity. Alex, if you could share with us some of the studies you've done, that would be very informative as well.
Sure. In San Diego, sometimes I probably sound like a broken record, but we really do, really do, and did make sure that we were considered transportation was really an extension of the classroom. And as many of the people who are listening today had so many opportunities to show cost savings, we really were able to use the technology to do those studies. On any given day, somebody said, how much would it cost to shift bell times? How much would it cost to start only high schools later? How much would it cost if these 10 schools were in a different cluster, et cetera, et cetera? We did it a little bit backwards. We actually started, we had a legacy system in San Diego that was a homegrown system, and there's nothing really wrong with those systems except for the fact that the people who had created them, in some cases a DOS-based system, didn't work there any longer. So although we weren't quite at the pins and yarn like John had said they were originally, San Diego was there originally, we had actually created an in-house system that worked fairly well, but it didn't communicate with a lot of our other systems. We actually, as I said, did it a little bit backwards. We started adding the other things first. We added a pre-trip inspection system on our buses, on some of our buses. We added a digital camera system, and then realized that a lot of these new systems that we were adding, including GPS, didn't really work alongside of our legacy routing system. So then we started to switch over. Still in San Diego, it's not a complete switchover yet. They're still implementing a lot of the changes. But I think bottom line is we were able to use the technology to really paint that picture again, whether it was bus replacement or the bell time scenarios, or looking to see how much we were saving in cost per minute, cost per mile, like Justin said. So we got there slowly but surely. Oftentimes the large urban districts, you would think that they would do things first. But I think a lot of times with the large districts, they're kind of set in their ways. So, a school board member may hear about something at a school board conference and come back and say, okay, we need cameras on all the buses, or we need GPS on all the buses. Just as you move forward with that, just make sure that the systems are speaking to each other, that they're really doing what it is
what it is you want them to do, and once again, that data that you put into it, make sure you're working with your special ed partners, your school partners, your facilities partners, your construction partners to make sure that the data you're getting in, San Diego still has 2 or 3 different student systems, getting those all to meld together. But we were able to use the information from the systems, once again, to paint that picture, which I think is so important from a director-administrator point of view.
Well, thank you, Alex and John and Jay. And I'll let you folks take a breath for a second while I move to summarize, and then we're going to ask for the audience to participate in one more poll, and then we're going to get to your questions. So we showed this graphic at the beginning because the roadmap is a good visual of how do you get there, how do you move your transportation program from yellow to black with keeping in mind the criteria of safety, services, and efficiency. And so with today's economic conditions, we have a lot of pressure at school districts to have their resources effectively and efficiently pay attention to these details, and we heard a lot of great examples from our panel today. Access to data is a critical ingredient towards achieving this goal, and we believe that leaders need effective tools to capture the data necessary to accurately measure their performance. So we discussed some of the ways you provide service to your special needs students and how that can have a great impact on your transportation costs. We then talked about the importance of areas such as HR and risk management and how that can achieve an efficiently run transportation program. And then we talked a little bit about technology that's available to assist you in creating efficient transportation and some of the main uses for technology that John was so elegantly able to give us examples of. So what we want to make sure is that you have a good understanding of how a transportation program and that it will enable a district to identify best practices and practices that fail to produce desired results. It can help clarify goals and priorities. It can help measure the impact of policy decisions and measure your progress and most importantly, create accountability for results. So I think, a definition of a good transportation program actually is much like we heard today. It's one that's taken for granted. It's consistent, and it demonstrates high levels of safety, service, and efficiency that a superintendent and a board of education can really focus their attention on the more critical responsibilities. So going back to our panel and listening to their insights and suggestions towards moving transportation programs to this status, this is something that is valued by parents in the community while helping to effectively support the instructional program. And we believe that the investment in technology can provide a long-term foundation for the success of your program. And now we ask you to not only consider how today's discussion will add value to your transportation objectives, but to give us your feedback in real time. And I'm now going to launch the second and final poll. And again, as you did with the first poll, what we'd like you to know, and this time you can choose all that apply, is that based on today's discussion, which of the following criteria would be a priority for your district? And again, choose all that apply. The first one up there is ID needs of students with disabilities for data collection. Mitigating risk management is a potential district liability. The third would be reducing cost of fleet maintenance. And then the fourth one is using technology to enhance safety and efficiencies. And let's share the results. Apparently, from the discussion today, the top-rated criteria that would be a priority would be the use of technology to enhance safety and efficiencies, where 80% of you think that would be a good investment, followed up by reducing costs in fleet maintenance, 61%, and then 43% IDing the needs of students with disability for data collection, and finally, mitigating risk management as a potential district liability. Well, panel, I'm going to ask you to turn your mics back on, and I want to start with some questions that came in. Justin, the first one is for you. This is from Michael, and Michael wants to know, is it better, more efficient to route for the new school year based on students that are riders from the prior year plus new students, or just route from the list of all students eligible to be transported?
Well, that's a good question, and there's really no specific answer for that. And we've heard a lot of great ideas today, and one of the things to remember is I use a 3-stage process when we're preparing for the upcoming school year. And one of the things that we do, which is local specific, is we have an application process for bus transportation for the upcoming school year. So our students actually have to apply for bus service. Now, in districts that I've worked with before that don't have that, I have always utilized the current figures and taken a look at the past demographics of the community. Has there been a 2% growth? And if so, what grade levels has that been in? Just so we have some ideas approximately how many students to put on each bus. And the specific schedule that we like to follow here and that I've always felt has been most comfortable with is our what we call Stage 1, which is January through March. We pre-design all of our routes, actually build them utilizing our students from this year, taking a look at what students are actually enrolling for transportation services for the upcoming school year. Our students have until the last week of March to enroll for transportation services. Stage 2, which is April through June, we do any updates through our student management system into the planning for the following school year. And then Stage 3 would be a finalized cleanup of our routes that takes place in July. That way our department's not left last minute making last-minute changes to our routes. We've planned well enough in advance. It gives us some breathing room in the summer to kind of focus on our routes, take a look at what we've created, and then work with the school staff to get this information communicated to our parents.
Thanks, Jay. Alex, second question is for you. It's from Sheila, and it's a two-part question. I'll read you both parts. Did you say that special ed pickups do not have to be door-to-door? And the second part is, how do you handle behavioral problems with special ed kids that have been placed on the big bus?
Okay, well, I did say that they don't have to be door-to-door. Kids really need to be treated like their non-disabled peers. And the least restrictive environment is required under the law, under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And really, it needs to be the closest, safest stop. So bottom line is, whatever the least restrictive environment is for that child within the school really needs to be the least restrictive environment on the bus. As I mentioned earlier, if that child is able to navigate in and around the school building, to and from the classroom without assistance, that child really isn't one who's going to need assistance directly at the stop or in front of the home. In San Diego, we always called it the closest, safest stop. Door-to-door, unfortunately, in many cases around the United States, has literally meant door-to-door. You know, second-floor apartment building, bus drivers gotten out. Remember, that's a legal document. The other thing I would remind everybody of is that when you're at an IEP meeting, and hopefully transporters are attending as part of the related service team, where the stop is actually placed shouldn't be part of the IEP. All that should be on the IEP really is what are the nature needs of that child, what sort of assistance in and around the classroom or school building does that child need, and then it should be up to the transporter to figure out what the best stop is, just like the speech therapist would figure out what the best speech therapy would be, or the occupational therapist. Those are all related services as well. In terms of behavior management, oftentimes our behavior of our kids without disabilities, especially those with MSD, or what I like to call middle school disease, have behavior that is challenging based on their age. It actually has nothing to do with their disability. So obviously a good behavior management plan, as well as behavior management training students, training drivers on how to deal with challenging behaviors is necessary for all students, whether they have, and all drivers, whether the kids have disabilities or not, so making sure the drivers are trained. We don't combine volatile behaviors. I wouldn't put, in our case, there's a lot of kids who have disabilities, but there's a lot of kids who really also have what I would consider maybe a social maladjustment. Maybe that child is involved in a neighborhood issue or a gang. I'm not going to put rival gangs on a bus together. I'm not going to put probably middle school and sixth graders together. However, I do combine students with disabilities with their non-disabled peers if the behavior is not volatile. And I think you probably have to take that on a case-by-case basis. I hope I answered the question.
Well, thanks, Alex. Thank you very much. Justin, here's one for you from Tracy. What software is being used for maintenance tracking?
When we did our initial purchase back a year ago, and I've done this before with other school systems, we wanted to make sure that the technology that we implemented in the garage was able to be linked with our routing software, our software that did our field trips, so it would share data and combine data. And we did a very in-depth, structured research panel comparing different programs that were available, different software vendors that were available. And although we found some that were cheap and, looked really good on paper, the more that we dove into it, had a strength in one area, a weakness in another, and we went with the WebAttract software for all of our needs, for parent communication, routing and planning, fleet maintenance software, and our field trips. And that's allowed us, all those components, to talk to each other, share data, and give us the data and the numbers that we need to be successful.
Great. John, I have one for you here. This is from Lewis. Lewis says, I have seen, in addition to GPS, an accelerometer device on the bus to measure G-force, which results in developing a driver profile. Question is, do you have experience with this type of system?
Well, wow. I mean, what Lewis is very progressive here in his question. What he's saying is measure the G-forces, what that bus is doing. Is that bus speeding up? Is it making hard turns? Is it slowing down? Is it making hard stops? That's a brave new world, and I can easily envision the technology getting us there shortly. My head swims when I think about having that technology to use. Sudden stops were a huge issue for us in Buffalo. Kids aren't prepared for the bus to stop suddenly. There would be no accident, but on a sudden stop, the kids do move around inside the cabin, and it was a huge issue that we were always dealing with. If I had a tool where I was able to examine the driver's driving characteristics, if I had some alerts perhaps, if I saw, in just either a random check or just alerts on characteristics that caused me concern, I think it would be a terrific learning tool for drivers so that they could compare themselves to how the rest of the drivers in the fleet were working, and it is an adjunct to this GPS capability that we're all going to see blooming and growing over the next few years.
Well, thank you, John, and special thanks again to our guests, Alex, John, and Justin, particularly Alex for braving the difference in time zones to be with us. We really appreciate each of you taking the time to spend the day with us and sharing your thoughts. And, of course, our sponsor, WebAttract, a Tyler School Solution, for making today possible. This is your moderator, Mike Agron, once again thanking you, wishing you the best of the week, and have a terrific weekend, and goodbye for now.